I think a lot of us have been scared before. If you say you've never been scared, you're a liar. You can find yourself scared of bugs, scared of the dark, scared of lightning, scared to disappoint someone, scared to be alone, or even scared of yourself. And the thing that creates this sense of fear within myself is when I find that I'm losing who I am in trying to be the best person that I can be. And really what I mean by that is growing up ethnically different in America, but culturally connecting with both American culture and the parts of my heritage. I am a Cambodian American. My parents came to America about 30 years ago in part of the Cambodian genocide. This is my dad in the refugee camp. And as you can see, life was a lot different. And if his life wasn't like this in the refugee camp, it looked a little bit like this. This is actually my family about a year ago in the communal space in the village. So his life and my mom's life changed drastically. This is the home that my dad grew up in, about 10 minutes away from here. As you can see, Cambodia is a lot different from America. And yet, my parents haven't lost any bit of where they came from. My parents live, eat, and breathe Cambodian culture. Do any of you guys know the show The Voice? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, my parents don't watch that show. You know what my parents watch? My parents watch the Cambodian version off of that they find on YouTube. And then my parents, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they eat Cambodian food. And they speak the language to each other and to our family 24/7. And yet, I find myself struggling to keep who I am. I find it hard because from a very young age, I've acknowledged that I will never ever be the Cambodian that my elders would want me to be. And I've acknowledged that I will never ever be the American that society wants me to be. I was at a business establishment maybe a few years ago, and my mom spoke maybe about 2 sentences worth of Khmer, the Cambodian language, to me. And a woman turned around, looked disgusted, and said to us, "You're in America, speak English." And I will remember that woman for the rest of my life. I can't fix the world's issue of racial prejudice, of discrimination, or of cultural assimilation all at once. But what I can do is offer you some perspective and how to live your life so that way it's not as dark. And that's what something that I call the AYA method. So what the AYA method stands for is acknowledgement, acceptance, initiative, and action. First and foremost, we have to acknowledge the situations that we're in. We have to acknowledge that our boss is in a position that we have yet to be in. We have to acknowledge that we only have $3 in our bank accounts. We have to acknowledge that sometimes we pour way too much milk for the amount of cereal that we have in the bowl. And culturally, we have to acknowledge where we come from, regardless of where that is, and regardless if it's hard to present ourselves to the world that way. And this was ultimately my struggle in middle school. I said I was a Cambodian American, but I really am more than that. I'm Cambodian, I'm Chinese, I'm Thai, and I'm Champa, which is a country that doesn't even exist anymore, but I've acknowledged that. And based off of what I just told you, how many of you could guess that's where I could trace my origins? The answer is you probably wouldn't know. And this was really the struggle in middle school because aside from asking people what my name was, the next thing they'd ask was, "What are you?" Because I was different. The demographic at my middle school was a lot different from anywhere else that I've actually been to. It was a lot of white Americans and a lot of Chinese Americans. And they knew that I was different. I knew that I was different. So they'd always ask, "What are you?" And so that was probably the hardest question that a 12-year-old had to answer because I didn't know what to say. Do I say that I am Cambodian? Do I say that I'm an American? Do I say that I'm Cambodian Chinese? Do I say that I'm Cambodian Thai? And usually what I defaulted to was I said that I was Cambodian Chinese or that I was Cambodian Thai because I knew that my time in middle school would have been a lot easier or more convenient if people could associate me with something that was familiar to them. And every time that I said that I was Cambodian Chinese or I was Cambodian Thai, I always felt a little bit guilty inside because I knew more than anything, I was a Cambodian American. The recognition of culture alone can expand our knowledge of the world extensively, making us more conscious of the world around us and more understanding of the perspectives that people take. It's one thing to be unknowing of the cultures that surround you and then educating yourself on it. And it's an entirely different thing when we choose to be ignorant of the cultures that curate our identity, because at that point, it's a choice. And what you're choosing is to deny yourself of who you are. Which brings me to my next step, acceptance. 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 So, acceptance in life is going to be one of the hardest things that you will ever have to do. Acceptance is the hardest pill you will ever swallow because it's the pill that you swallow that always wants to come back up. It always resurfaces in your life. Acceptance is hard, and I know that. And what comes along with acceptance is rejection. And sometime in your life, somebody's going to reject you because of who you are. I'm not just speaking culturally, I'm just speaking generally. But culturally, somebody is going to reject you who you are, because of who you are ethnically or who you are culturally. And it's going to hurt because in that moment, they just rejected everything that you stood for. And rejection comes in subtle ways, and sometimes it's more explicit. But it comes in the way that people talk to you, and it comes in the way that people look at you. And if you let it, it affects the way that you see yourself. My name is Chanmarie. That is how I presented myself to you guys today. But outside of my home, that's not who I was. Outside of my home, I was Chanmarie, or I was John Marie, or I was Sean Marie, or I was whoever that person wanted to call me that day. I was never myself outside of my home. And I knew that that was wrong. But I lived with that for 17 years of my life because I taught myself to accept a person that wasn't me. And it came to me recently that I have to stop doing this. I have to stop misrepresenting myself. Because at one point, I'm going to have to sit on the couch 20 years from now, look at my husband dead in the eye, or my best friend dead in the eye, and say, Chanmarie is not my name. And going back to that theme of fear, that's a scary conversation to have. Because you lied to that person for however many years, because you lied to yourself. And there's no reason why you should lie to yourself on who you are. Admitting who you are and affirming what you are projects a confidence. And it's a confidence that many people are blind to see at first. Not only that, it comes with a sense of empowerment. And furthermore, it paints the picture that you are comfortable with yourself, that you've accepted yourself, that you embrace everything that you are, culturally, and everything in between. And that's what acceptance is. Acceptance is about getting yourself to this point. But acceptance isn't the only thing that you should do. It comes with a sense of initiative. Initiative is one of the most important things that you can do to preserve where you come from and what you are culturally. Initiative is the start to everything that you want to pursue. You have to pursue all the things that make you who you are culturally. This is a photo of me at 12 years old at the Cambodian temple. And that's what I've been doing for the past 17 years. I took the initiative to continue my Cambodian heritage through food, cultural customs, language, and everything in between. I took the initiative to ask my mom why I was at the temple on Saturday instead of on a playground like the rest of the kids. And that's when I found out that initiative was knowledge-driven. We have to educate ourselves on the things that we don't know. And not only is initiative knowledge-driven, initiative is courage-driven, because it takes courage to ask those questions that we don't know. I had to ask my mom why I had to sit a certain way, why I had to dress a certain way, why I had to look a certain way when I was at the temple, when I just had to be the Cambodian person that I was representing. And because I asked, because I educated myself, I could culturally connect more with who I was. And I became comfortable with that. But this event was probably one time out of the year. I can't truly say I'm a Cambodian American because I go to the temple one time out of the year and go to the temple that one time. Initiative needs a substance, and what that substance is action. Action is the most important part to continuing initiative. If initiative is the one-time thing, action is the everyday thing, and they work together. We, as a society who has become acquainted with immigrant culture, should take the actions that allow us to preserve our origins. And the place that we are in doesn't define who we are. The people we hang around They don't define who we are. But do you know what does? It's the actions that we choose to take that define who we are. I used to think about people like marble sculptures, that we would chip off all these rugged parts of ourselves, so that way we could create something beautiful for the world to see. So that way we could create a version of ourselves that we would love to see. But then I asked myself, what happens to all those rugged parts? They get thrown away. You don't ever see it again. You don't ever look back. And I realized I was wrong, and that we should start thinking about people like clay, that you mold yourself without throwing anything away into this person that you want to be, and into this beautiful person that you would want to present to the world, or that you would want to present to yourself. And that everything is preserved because of who you are. I can't fix the world's issue of culture and it being lost. The challenge for many Americans today is that they can't find who they are. It used to be that growing up in America was a challenge because you were ethnically different. And for many, it still is. And now, in this new wave of this generation, a generation of immigrants and immigrant children, that growing up culturally different is also a challenge. But it doesn't have to be. And it's a challenge that many of us don't know how to face. So if you ever feel culturally lost or confused about yourself, ask yourself this: what did you do? And you tell yourself, "Aya." Use the "Aya" method. Tell yourself "Aya," so that way you can acknowledge, accept, initiate, and act. So that way the only decision that you have to make that day is to be yourself and to always choose you before you choose to be anyone else. Thank you for listening to my talk.